Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Today I want to talk about what might be one of the worst lawsuits of all time. And this is the case of Mark Jerome Johnson Blunt against the United States of America, including the ATF and various others. So what makes a case one of the worst of all time? Well, step one is going to be filing it pro se. So as a self-represented individual. Why is this important? Well, because you really can't get to maximum crazy with a lawyer involved, at least not with a competent lawyer, because a lawyer at a certain point is going to say, whoa, we're not doing that. That makes no sense. Pump the brakes. Or they'll say, whoa, let's talk you out of that, that really overly weird argument and into something that the law might actually recognize. So really, if we're going to see maximum crazy, it's going to come from something that is pro se. But step two is be an actual lawyer. And the reason why this is step two is because lots of people struggle with the legal system. It's tough, it's complicated, it's poorly explained by lawyers to the rest of the public. And so it's really not fair to hold people who are struggling with a system that is often inscrutable to the same standard that we hold lawyers. Whereas we expect lawyers are going to be sane and competent and reasonable and all of these things. And so when we see a lawyer going off the rails, that we can hold them to a different standard and go, hey, this is really something messed up here. This is truly bizarre. And step three is going to be an overwhelming sense of self-importance. Too much ego to really step back and say, hey, is this a good idea? So now we're going to take a step and we're going to look at the actual case here just to see, do we have these things? Because, all right, so step one, comes now plaintiff Mark Jerome Johnson Blunt, gentleman esquire, which is a term you will see literally nowhere else. Gentleman esquire. Esquire is sometimes used to indicate that somebody's a lawyer, but gentleman esquire is a new one. Juris Doctor graduate of Duke University School of Law, and scorer of a 173, the 99th percentile on the law school admissions test, and a 169.6, roughly the 95th percentile, on the multi-state bar exam portion of the uniform bar exam. Here's the thing. Normally the way this starts out, and everybody who watches this channel knows that I hate the comes now introduction, but we're going to leave that by. We're going to leave that today. That's not the craziest thing we're going to see here. You just normally say, comes now so-and-so, counsel for so-and-so, who seeks whatever. You don't normally put in anything about how great you are. And if you were, you wouldn't use the LSAT. He starts off with scorer of a 173, the 99th percentile on the law school admissions test. What is the LSAT? Well, it's a test you take to get into law school. It's a test of reading comprehension, to a certain extent reading speed, and your ability to deal with certain logical problems as well as logical puzzles. It's used for law school admissions tests or law school admission and nothing else. In fact, once you're already in law school, it's considered a little embarrassing if you keep going on about your LSAT score. Certainly, it's really embarrassing if you put it into a court filing where it's absolutely irrelevant. Nobody cares at this point what your LSAT score is. And even if they did, if I was going to put my LSAT score into a court filing to make it sound like somehow the court should listen to me over that, I'd want to make sure that it was a 180, which is the maximum score, and not a 173, which is a pretty good score. But your judge might have scored better. I mean, I did. So your judge might have scored better, in which case they're going to be going, okay, you're bragging about a score that's worse than mine. Or they might have scored worse, in which case they're going to be even more inclined to say, this is ridiculous that you put this in here. This is the legal equivalent of filing your dick size. You just don't do it. So, yeah, we're off to a great start. How does it get worse, you might be asking? Well, let's talk about that. The next ingredient of a truly awful lawsuit is that it has to affect more than just the people involved, especially if it affects something like constitutionally protected rights. So we can look at the guy who sued Taylor Swift because she wouldn't go out on a date with him, and he wanted to force her to go out on a date with him. And really, that case only affects that guy and Taylor Swift and everyone who enjoyed making fun of that guy, which is, in fairness, lots of people, but they had very little skin in the game. By contrast, if you're looking at a lawsuit that's really awful, it'll be one that has the potential to screw up things like, freedom of speech, or in this case, the Second Amendment. Now, this guy does have a Second Amendment argument, and in particular, what he wants is plaintiff plans on purchasing an M16 rifle, M4 rifle, squad automatic weapon, or other machine gun, which comprises the standard issue equipment of a service member in the United States military, manufactured after 1987, to wit, an ordinary military weapon, or converting the AR-15 rifles that he already lawfully possesses to automatic weapons. So keep in mind, as we hear everything else that goes on, that what he wants here is he wants some full auto guns. Now, you can get full auto guns in the States. I've gone to the States and shot them. They're just really, really expensive, and he's hoping to buy cheaper ones that are not having to navigate the whole current bureaucracy around that. So he's got this issue, and he's one of the smartest lawyers in the country, according to him, but he's too poor to afford one of the existing guns. So, okay, we'll just wrap our head around that for the moment. So with the way this guy touts his supposed super intelligence, you'd think he'd have a really good argument. But it wouldn't be a contender for the worst lawsuit ever if he did, so let's have a look. He says, in this country, the original sovereign, the fount of sovereignty, the sovereign body, was the founding generation, the members of the body politic of the 13 original colonies who, upon freeing themselves from the yoke of the King of England, became sovereigns by assuming the powers of government, the sovereign powers possessed by the king by way of declaring their independence and successfully prosecuting their claim to sovereign power to fruition through victory in the American Revolutionary War. Citing Dred Scott, which is not good law anymore. For fairly obvious reasons. Dred Scott is a terrible decision, which is basically racism in a can. So, yeah, every person and every class and description of persons who were at the time of the adoption of the Constitution recognized as citizens in the several states became also citizens of this new political body, but none other. It was formed by them and for them and their posterity, but for no one else. So, do you think this is a bit of a sovereign citizen argument? I mean, he only says sovereign about, 18 times? And, yeah, he's essentially arguing that there are certain Americans with more rights than other Americans. And goes on to try to prove that he's one of those Americans with more rights by literally filing as Exhibit 1 family genealogy of the Blount family, or Blunt family. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I assume it's probably Blunt. The descent of Mark Jerome Johnson Blunt the First. Who the heck calls themselves the First? Anyway, from William LeBlunt of Belton. So he then goes on and lists his entire family tree so that he can humiliate every relative he's ever had by including them in this zany BS. Okay, that's a thing. Now, I'm just going to say there is no way that a court is going to accept this idea of hereditary rights like this in the United States. It just doesn't seem like an argument that is possibly going to fly, but he's going to try it anyway. What he's trying to argue here is that certain Americans have more rights than other Americans. And that as one of these Americans who is gifted with more rights rather than less, he should be able to have a machine gun. He's a special American, a very special boy, and therefore he needs a machine gun. Now, by citing Dred Scott, and in fact later on in the in his I guess manifesto is the word for it. It's 189 pages, which is just some ridiculous BS. But he makes it clear when he recites Dred Scott that when he says that there are certain Americans who have more rights than other Americans, the ones that he means in terms of having less rights are black people. So this is also based heavily on racism. All right, his argument is sovereign citizenry combined with racism. Spectacular. Just spectacular. So to really contend for the title of worst lawsuit ever, we need a big finish. Where's the big finish? Well, big finish. While plaintiff proceeds pro se in this action, plaintiff is a lawyer, a graduate of Duke University School of Law, and a scorer of a 173, the 99th percentile on the LSAT, and a 169.6 on the Multi-State Bar Exam, MBA, portion of the Uniform Bar Exam, UBE, and a 169 on the MBE portion of the Georgia Bar Exam, roughly the 95th percentile on said MBA portions of the bar exams. As such, plaintiff's time is extremely valuable. Plaintiff charging between $300 and $500 per billable hour for work that he completes for clients as a private practice attorney. Now, if I was one of his clients and was reading this, I would probably be sending in a request for a refund. But we've got this little distinction to make here because he says plaintiff's time is extremely valuable. And he provides some details to support the notion that his time is expensive because he charges $300 to $500 per billable hour for it. But he provides substantial counter evidence to the notion that it's valuable. Because if this is the kind of work he's producing, I don't think it's terribly valuable. Carrying on. As plaintiff is one of the most intelligent attorneys in this country, and one of the most competent attorneys in this field of law. Sir, you cited Dred Scott. Plaintiff should be allowed to collect attorney's fees in connection with his self-representation in this case, as the very intent of 28 U.S.C. 2412b is to enable United States citizens to vindicate their rights when said rights are unconstitutionally infringed by the federal government. You're not going to have to worry about collecting attorney's fees because you ain't winning. That's not how this is going to go. Plaintiff has spent hundreds of hours drafting this complaint and researching the law so that he may effectively vindicate his right to keep and bear arms before this court. Maybe you should have noted up Dred Scott, sir. I believe that he spent hundreds of hours on this manifesto, but maybe you shouldn't have. Maybe you should have gone outside and touched grass, and I don't know, literally anything would have been a better use of your time. This is embarrassingly bad. And as mentioned, I mean, I'm a gun guy. I generally support firearm rights. I think it's kind of silly that the US allows people with money to get, to sort of have and shoot full auto firearms, whereas people who can't afford the very expensive prices for this are priced out. I can see some good arguments for challenging it, which are not the arguments he makes here. And so everyone who might want to actually challenge this on legitimate grounds should be upset by this guy trying to blow that up by filing this absolute crazy town lawsuit. Now, if you're anti-gun and, you don't like firearms, and especially you don't like full auto firearms, this guy is your crazy racist friend today. All right, well, This lawsuit hurt me personally, and I wanted to share it with you all, but mostly because this Mr. Blunt, wherever he is, I know he's very, very sensitive to people mocking his work, and it's very mockable. It entirely deserves mockery, and that's what we're here for. Mr. Blunt, your LSAT score is not that impressive, and your legal research and writing is freaking embarrassing. So maybe knock that off. Anyway, so hopefully you guys have enjoyed this as much as I have, because yeah, this one deserves some serious mockery. Please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to see more content. If you want to support on Patreon, there is a link below in the description, and I'm here to thank my Patreon supporters. At the $50 level, the CCFR, CAIM, Canada's National Firearms Association, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited and Jane Baven Luxor. And at the $20 level, Lindsay Metcalf, Kyle Fox, Haywire, Gerald to the Bailey, Cameron Johnson, Andrew Elsich, Vicky, and Brigitte Edrup. Thank you as well to my $10 supporters who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you for watching. I hope this armed you with knowledge, and I hope you had a bit of a laugh. See you next time.